Okay, there we go. Okay, so you're gonna get everything on here. We've gone as far as cash verification forms, check request forms with receipts, invoices attached. This is what you should be doing now. Before that June 30th bank statement comes in, you're starting to look through everything and make sure you've got all the records that you can. If you have a debit card, there should have been a pre-authorization form for all your debit expenses. There should be a receipt for all of those debit expenses, and it should be itemized. If you have a debit card, you should have an electronic banking agreement. This is in the PTA Dollars and Cents Kit of Materials. It is a form you fill out that agrees when you get a debit card that you're going to use it for PTA purposes only. And it also records your information and the debit card information so that if for some reason you lose the debit card, you still have all the numbers to be able to call the bank and get it turned off. The other thing is it's an agreement. If there was any malfeasance, any misuse of the card, that statement says that you told them that they could only use it for PTA purposes, that they weren't allowed to go to Disneyland, Disney World on your credit card. So you want to have that electronic banking agreement on file with both the treasurer and the recording secretary. And again, it's a form found in Dollars and Cents. Just like you would have your pre-approved authorization forms with the receipts and your check request forms with the receipts, any invoices you paid need to have their receipts. Proof of PTA insurance. You need to show your auditors that you purchased not just the amount out of your bank account, but your actual certificate of insurance. Because honestly, that needs to be uploaded to givebacks. So this is an opportunity for you to get it out, get it downloaded from the AIM website, and get it uploaded to givebacks. If you bought it this year, your expiration date is October 31st, 25. October 31st, 25. Again, if you had any interim audits, those need to be presented to your end of year audit committee. Monthly treasurer reports. So every month when you've had your board meeting, you gave a monthly treasurer report. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. So those need to be included as the documentation that goes to your auditors. You have to have a final approved budget. Now, if you've edited your budget several times throughout the year, your auditors actually don't need to see that you edited it and edited it again and edited it again. That will be in the minutes, but they need to know just what was the bottom line at the end of the year. What was our final approved budget? And then a copy of all the minutes. So this is also an opportunity to prompt your secretary to gather their paperwork together and get all the board, executive committee, and general meeting. The secretary can provide that to the audit committee, or they can provide a copy to you to include in your paperwork that you'll hand the audit committee. You need a completed copy of your IRS form, whether it's a 990, 990EZ, or 990N. Again, these are going to be uploaded to givebacks. So this is an opportunity. If you haven't, by the way, I've been doing it for a lot of you, pulling it down off of the IRS website, uploading it to givebacks for this year. But next year, November 15th comes around, you got to get it uploaded for the new year for your 990, your 990EZ, or your 990N. And that needs to be the accepted confirmation. It can't say pending. And it can't be the copy for information purposes. You need to wait the 7 minutes and get the copy of the final accepted 990. Again, we will have a 990 meeting later in the year. Bylaws. whatever your bylaws are, whether they are still within the 3 years and not expired, or whether they are older than that, whatever your current copy is, stamped approved by the Florida PTA, is your bylaws. And your audit committee needs to know what those bylaws are. And then because you're here today, none of you guys are going to be clicking inactive unit, because that's for us county councils when we get a PTA going and restarted. All right, let me take a look at the chat box. Somebody asked to share the recording, which is why I realized I forgot to hit the record button. You have a volunteer CPA and their license is active in Florida. Does it matter whether they are in public practice or not? No, it does not. If they have a valid CPA license, then they can review and be the only auditor, but they must use the Florida PTA form. If we don't have all the receipts, the bank has registration of all the checks. Okay. Guys, I can tell you right now, I've been doing, treasurer seems to be what I do a lot of. The last time I counted, which was a few years back, I had done it 21 times. So I tend to do a lot of treasury stuff. I can't think of a single year when I had 100% of my receipts. You're always missing 1, 2, hopefully not more than that. The auditors can just make a note of it. If they think it was a problem, then yeah, you're going to have to chase the receipt down. If you used a credit card or a debit card, most stores can reprint a receipt. Found that out. But if you paid cash, then it's going to be a little bit harder. Obviously you can't reimburse somebody who can't find a receipt. So, you know, if you don't have the receipt, I'm not sure how you wrote a check for it. Now the bank has registration of all the checks. Well, they have a copy of the check that you wrote, but that's not a receipt for why you wrote it. That's just a copy of what you wrote. So you really should do your best to try to get all the receipts. If you truly cannot find a receipt, then they can write a statement saying that this is what they bought, this is how much it was, and it was for PTA purposes. I attest that my information is accurate. Again, if it's just 1 or 2 for the year, then it's not a big deal. Every purchase and check request should have a receipt. No checks should be written without a receipt. However, if you can't find it, you have to document that it's missing. Yes, Maria, absolutely. Where can I get a copy of the bylaws? Well, the good news is eventually givebacks. Yay! Givebacks is going to be the document keeper for everything from now on. For right now, we've got it. County Council has it. If you need it, feel free to email me. My email address, I'm about to put it in here, treasurer at, if I can spell treasurer right, treasurer at mdccpta.net. Send me a request for your bylaws, and don't forget to tell me what school you're with, because I'm not a psychic and I don't want to have to look it up. So please just send me an email asking for bylaws and tell me what school that you're with.
Thank you.
No problem. Can the CPA be related to a member of the board? Believe me, there is no CPA out there who is going to risk their license, by doing a bad job on an audit. That's just not worth it to them. So yes, if they're willing to sign as a CPA, licensed CPA, then it doesn't matter if they're related. As long as they're not related to someone who is a check signer. That's just probably bad practice. And yes, Maria, thank you very much. Okay. Any questions about what you need to gather? Okay, I can't see anybody. Maria, do you see any hands up?
Erica has her hand up.
Hey, Erica, welcome.
Hi. I have a great question. This came up in my county over here in Hillsborough. What are you telling local units? You know how more and more banks, they aren't putting um, they know back in the day, right? You used to actually get the cleared check back with your bank statement, and then they moved to making copies of it with the statement. But now we've started to see an uptick in banks that they don't do that. And you can
Right.
see the cleared check online. But we uncovered a case of fraud over here to 5 figures. And we realized that if that particular bank had not had the cleared checks on it, we never would have known that the fraud occurred. And I just wondered how you were helping local units do that. You know, what do you tell them to do if it does not come with the bank statement?
Okay, so somebody who was an authorized check signer was cashing checks. Is that what was happening?
It was,
Oh.
they were writing it out to cash, and it was only one thing. It was the president who was the bad actor in this case. So writing it out to cash, only the president was signing it, and then putting in the memo where it would say for the yearbook, but they wrote it to cash for 4,000. And no vendor should be taking cash to conduct their business. None. It should be check, money order. So that kind of, it popped up on our radar. We were like, what is this? Who would ever write it? You should never write a check to cash to begin with for any reason. So it
Right.
kind of was this huge red flag. And then when we started digging in it, we realized that we only realized that because we could see the physical image of the check. Because as the auditing crew, we were looking for two signatures. We were looking to make sure that the check numbers were matching with what was on the statement, all the due diligence. And then we were like, cash, cash, who's cash? And then it just,
Understood. Okay.
yeah. And so we realized then when we brought it back to county council, we were like, how do we educate our officers for because Regions Bank is one that when you get the bank statement, the checks are no longer in there. You can access them online, but only for what, 2 years, 3 years? I don't know the time period. So I just wanted to put that up because it like this popped up maybe about 6 months ago, Sandra. So it is even kind of new for us where I was like, oh, we need to address that. And I'm not quite sure the best way. So I would love to get input from Miami-Dade.
So the question I have is when you're doing the audit and you come to check number 101 that was written for $4,000 for the yearbook. So there must have been a yearbook receipt in the audit documentation, right?
There was not. But
See,
that's
there's the
not what
problem.
that's not what we started with. Like we started by just looking at, everybody does the audit differently, people. So just because we do so many, we start looking at the bank statements first. And then we start going month by month and looking at what happened. So to your point, we had not gotten to that point yet, but it was of course, as soon as we saw cash, I was like, this was in this month, pull that month's file. Like, where did this money go? And there was no corresponding, documentation on that. And then it all kind of unraveled from there.
Well, yeah, because I have come across not something similar in that we had a receipt for $6,000 from a vendor, and when we looked the vendor up online, none of their products were over $60.
Right.
So it was an edited receipt.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so what you have to do is you have to be a little bit skeptical when you're seeing things. They need to make sense. So that's why I asked, when the memo said yearbook on the check that you saw, that means that in the documentation, they had a receipt from the vendor saying that $4,000 was paid against the yearbook bill. And you're saying, no, that wasn't there. So now we have two instances where one was the check image that showed that it was paid to cash, which never should have happened. And two, if there was no check image, there was no receipt documentation for the check that was written. And honestly, a $4,000 check without a receipt, that's a huge red flag by
It
itself.
is. And what we realized too, though, is the reason why we had the discussion is she could have forged the receipt, but we wouldn't have been able to go back to the bank to see that check image, right? We would have had the bank statement and it would have showed that it would have cleared and it would have matched, right?
Okay.
Because it's not going to put it in there. It's just going to say check 1, 2, 3, 4 cleared on such and such date. And if she would have forged it, so this is where
Understood.
you guys, you're getting to see like what we deal with like in real time here, because you have to be a detective and you have to like really be, I don't worry about the $4 receipts or the $40. I'm looking for $40 100 times, or, that's, I start looking for patterns when I'm doing the audits.
Right.
But that one was really like, we started advising we haven't created formal policy yet. We're working on it, but we're going to advise our local unit treasurers, if the image is not with your check, just print it or save it to your drive or something with your paperwork, because the banks are, even your digital files, like you can't get them after 5 years or 3 years, depending on the institution. So that's where we just said, like at the end of every month when you're reconciling, it's just a PDF, download it, tuck it into a folder somewhere so that you have because they do have the physical image. It just doesn't come with that bank statement anymore. It's just frustrating.
And with the county council, we have duplicate check intentionally for that reason.
That's another good one too. Yeah.
And
this
if you
one did
don't have
not.
duplicate check, because duplicate checks, I will say, are not cheap to buy. If you're working with a cheaper check image, take a picture of the check. If your bank doesn't return a copy of the check at all, if you're not even a PDF download of the check image, because you may have a bank that doesn't do that even, then you're going to have to get in the habit of taking a picture of the check and filing that with your paperwork, so that the auditors can see the actual check and confirm when they check off that there were 2 signatures on every check. So we haven't quite gotten to that section of the audit form, but that's what this is what the treasurer has to get together. And then we're going to go over what the actual audit is. So treasurers.
Sandra, I have my hand up. I wanted to add to her,
yes.
too, that giving access somehow to, or having someone that has access to the bank account would be useful at the audit, because you can't always, and we have found that out, go by what even your bank statement says. People are getting very smart and PDFing and updating and checking that. So not only that, if you can't find a check because you don't get copies, but if you're able to get into the bank account while you're doing that audit to confirm that checks are there, and that at least 1 or 2 of the months match. You don't have to go one by one, but at least that the months match the physical bank statement that you got provided with the bank statement that you can see in the bank account, because we did have that happen to us in one of our local units.
Erica and Maria and myself, we could probably talk all night about all of our little audit nightmares that we've had over the years.
We should write a book. It would be a great read.
But yeah, like she said, the auditors should be a little bit like detectives, and they should be skeptical of what they're reading, because you need to make sure that the documentation is there, that 1 + 1 = 2, and that everything makes sense for what happened. I mean, if I'm looking at bank statements and I see ATMs that are withdrawn, late December, that's a red flag right there, that you're not doing anything after the school's let out for the holiday. Why would there be any reason to take out cash for your PTA at that time? That would be a red flag. So you want to do the audit with integrity, and you want to go over everything. Now, it is the job of the auditors to fill in all this, but treasurers, do it first. Make sure that you can make the numbers match. Beginning check number, ending check number, where did you start at the beginning of the year, everything you did. And you're going to watch me do an audit because I've got one that I can do in about 5 minutes, because there's weren't a whole lot of transactions for the year. And, all this information, the book balance on hand, when you do your expenses, you include anything that hasn't cleared yet, but has been written. Those are listed down here and added up here. So the difference between this line and this line, the statement balance, would be the outstanding checks. There shouldn't have been any outstanding deposits, and there shouldn't have been, anything else, but any checks that were written but had not yet been cashed by the end of June are included as an expense for the year. And this line ends up matching this line. So the balance, now notice it says balance of all accounts. So I'm talking PayPal, Stripe, Zelle, all of that ideally gets deposited into the main checking account prior to the end of June. In fact, I got to go do my checking too. I got to go check all those accounts and make sure that everything's deposited by the end of June, so that I don't have anything left in those other accounts. All of them show zero balance at the end of June. Now, what do the auditors do? Not only are they looking at the numbers here, but they have some questions to answer.
These questions from the press, including one about shooting protesters. We're gonna get reaction from California Congressman Eric Swalwell.
Sorry, Gail, let me mute you. We're hearing your background. Okay. So this first section here is about your IRS. Did you make more than $50,000 total? Every penny that went into your bank account, was it over $50,000? If the answer is no, then you can file the e-postcard if you've answered no 3 years in a row. However, if you filed the 990 EZ the previous year, or the long form, or your average over those 3 years is more than $50,000, then you are going to have to file the 990 EZ or the long form. Again, we will do a 990 class later this year, but the auditors try to help out with this by what they know. So they may not know what last year's 990 was. You're going to have to help them out, treasurers. And they may not know what the average is over the last 3 years. You're going to have to help them out. Also, you need to know your membership payments. Why? Because what you pay to Florida PTA, if that will drop you back under $50,000, then you don't have to file the long form, because the money that you collected and turned over to Florida PTA was never really your money to keep. So it's not considered your income. It's considered Florida PTA's income. So if that will help move you back underneath the 50K, then by all means, absolutely. Because I know I'd rather do the short forms. Now, the auditors are going to answer all of these questions. These questions are provided to help those auditors do a good job with the audit. Did everything match up? Did we start where we said we ended last year? Did you reconcile the bank statement every month? Were they signed by another person? What? They were supposed to be signed by another person? Yeah. Somebody who was not a check signer on the bank account should be signing your bank statement every month, signing off on it, that everything on there looked right and they looked accurate. They're not checking everything like an auditor, but they're just looking it over, that there's no ATMs, there's no unusual activity. Believe me, I looked at my bank statement, showed it to one of my people in November, and went, hello, there's a not Wells Fargo, Maria, help me out.
Temu, Amazon? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's you. That there was a Western Union
Oh,
extraction from our bank account, and it was an error. And thankfully, we caught it within 30 days, and they said, yep, that was a mistake, and paid us right back. There was no argument about it. Now, if we had waited too long and didn't notice it, who knows whether or not we would have been paid back so quickly. So that's why the bank statement should be reviewed by somebody every month. Again, Erica was talking about this. Did all checks written contain 2 signatures? How do you verify that if you don't have copies of the check? So you need to, and that's an individual bank thing. So you need to find out, does your bank return copies of the check on the bank statement? Awesome. That's great. That's beautiful. Do they provide a copy as part of the bank statement? And guess what we found out? When we download to QuickBooks, our bank actually uploads the bank statement, the check pictures as well. They are there in QuickBooks. So we are able to get a copy of those checks to our auditors if they have access to QuickBooks for viewing. Did everything get properly recorded in the checkbook, rather, especially those uncashed checks? Is the treasurer recording things as they're written, or is they not recording them until they clear the bank? That's not the right way to do accounting. They should be recorded as they're written, not just as they're cleared. Because otherwise, how do you know what's still floating out there? It asks you up above what your insurance date is. The auditors have to see that insurance certificate. It should be part of the documentation that you're providing, because they have to answer, did the PTA purchase insurance? Again, were all check requests, reimbursements authorized, approved by the president or their designee, and contain receipts? So in that question that Erica posed about the check return that was written to cash, my first question was there a receipt for that check that showed that it was supposed to be written for $4,000? I hope that none of your PTAs are paying vendors with cash at the end of an event. How do you document that? What's your chain of paperwork when you're paying cash? How do you even know how much you made on the event if you turned around and took some of that cash that you made on the event and paid a vendor with it? You really should not be doing that. That's not good business practices. Did you purchase or receive gift cards? Even if you didn't buy them, gift cards are income. They are donations to your PTA, and they need to be recorded as such in the treasurer's book. And there needs to be a record of how they were disposed of. Were they given out to individuals as incentives? Were they spent for products that the PTA used? In which case the receipts would be there showing the spent gift certificate. Or did they just poof, disappear into the wind? Gift certificates should be treated like cash, and they need to be recorded as such. And that's what it means by, were they recorded and documented properly? In other words, if you bought $100 worth of Publix gift cards, did $100 worth of Publix gift cards get given out? Did they get used? What happened? Did the PTA use cash verification forms and cash count sheets? I've been at events where they're like, oh no, we forgot the cash count sheet. Guess what? Grab a piece of paper, write it out, handwritten. That's okay. We had 3 $20 bills. We had 2 $10 bills. We had 4 ones and a whole bunch, we had 7 quarters. Write it out, add it up, 2 people sign the bottom, date it, take a picture of it. There's your cash verification forms. I've stapled napkins into my treasurer book before. Doesn't matter what you write it on, doesn't have to be a formal form. And the thing you don't want to do is rewrite it. No, whatever got done that night, that's what gets recorded. That's what goes in the book. I have it on the back of a lot of agendas and who knows what. As long as you have it, that's what's important. So again, if you don't have them, then just don't go back and recreate them. That's not the right way to do business either. Just, you need to do better next time. Were all funds received and counted by two persons verified by the treasurer? If you're using the cash verification form, these two would always be yes and yes. Did the funds received match the deposits? Well, I can tell you right now, I had a few no's on that, and let me tell you why. Got done counting, everybody signed off, on my way out the door. Hey, we just sold another soda, here's $1. Okay, my deposit's going to be $1 more than my cash verification form says. As long as your deposit isn't less, you know, $1 or $2 more, we get it. If it's one of those kind of events. So it is what it is. I usually just write +1, you know, initial it on the side, and my deposit slip is $1 more than what my cash verification form said. You do what you need to do, but try to not let those last minute sales get you. Oh, here's a point on last minute sales. You've had a pizza sale. You bought 10 pizzas. You've got 8 slices per pizza. You're selling it for $1 a slice. That means that you should have made $80, but you're only depositing 30. Where'd the rest of the money go? Where's the other $50? Oh, you didn't sell 5 of your pizzas and you gave them to the security and custodial staff? You need to write that down on the cash verification forms, that 5 pizzas were donated to staff, so that when the auditors are looking and they see that you've paid for 8 pizzas and they're expecting $80 of deposit for those 8 pizzas and there's only $30 of deposit, you have a reason and you have a verification of what happened, that you don't have as much being deposited as should be. My apologies. All right. So going back to your budget, nothing should be spent on a budget that wasn't approved. So was income spent according to the approved budget? Or were things bought that weren't approved by the general membership? That's the problem. And do those general meeting minutes include that budget approval? So as a treasurer, as an officer, you need to make sure that you've approved your budget at a general meeting, and that the membership has the last say in how all money is spent. And then at subsequent meetings, did you amend your budget? Does the first budget match? So this is where the minutes come in that the secretary needs to provide so that they can answer these questions. And then ultimately, does the number of memberships sold match the number of memberships paid to the state? Have I had these numbers be different? Yeah, I've had a few last minute memberships sneak in late June that didn't get paid before June 30th. Then unfortunately, this year, you're going to end up paying $1 more, but I've had payments in July for memberships taken at the end of June. Now, ultimately, the audit report is this. They audited the books and found them to be correct. They audited the books and found the following problems or make suggestions, and I'll show you some example suggestions. Or they audited the books, found significant problems, as Erica and Maria just exemplified for us, and they need to be reported. if you're in this section, you really should be calling us. Letting us know, letting us come in and help. And taking it to the next step. The last thing you want to do is if you are found significant problems, you don't accuse anybody of anything. You don't say a word because you may affect the ability to do anything about it legally if you make accusations and create a libelous situation. So you are going to include a copy of the June 30th bank statement, as well as any audit findings if you have checked the second section. So you have 1, 2, 3 auditors if they are volunteers, or if they are a professional CPA, they check here and they only sign once. We also have incoming president and incoming treasurer signing. And then you want to annotate the date that you're going to upload it to givebacks. All right, let's stop sharing on that. And I will, before I move on to the next section, do we have any questions? I
Yeah,
don't see any hands.
I have a
Awesome.
I have a question, sorry.
Oh, go
Um,
ahead, Emmy.
So I was looking at the last part so that you just went over. So they need to upload and give back the bank statement and the auditor forms, right? That you just showed.
Correct, but you're
Yeah.
going to have to make it one file.
Okay, got it. Because I'm going to help them with it. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will tell you that I have always purchased for myself Adobe Pro. Even when I didn't have an income, I somehow managed to scrape together $20 a month to get my Adobe Pro
Mhm.
because I use it that much.
Okay.
And it helps because you can organize pages and add 2 PDF files together and make one. But if you guys need help doing that, guys, it'd take me 5 seconds. So I will help combine files, not do audits. And Paula, thank you so much for the reference. Free online PDF editor, edit PDFs with ease. So Paula's sent you guys a great reference. So feel free to check out the references that other people are giving you for free stuff. All right, let's go on now. And I said that what I would do for you is I would actually show you a quick audit. And these are files that I'm going to email everybody who registered, whether they're here or not. Last year, this PTA, SEPTA, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on it. Special Education PTA of Florida, which is out of Orange County. We only have the one bank account with Truist, but I realize now that I made a mistake and I need to include Stripe on there because we do have givebacks. Notice that we couldn't check minutes of our board meetings. Erica, don't yell at me. Because we didn't have them. And we are a statewide PTA, so getting pre-approval is a difficult task other than a text message and an email. However, our auditors did review all of our stuff, and they did feel that we had taken notice that the previous form only had 2 yes or no. They now have 3 with not applicable. Because in fact, we did not buy gift cards, so it was not applicable. And we didn't spend anything other than membership last year. So you can see that we wrote all of 2 checks for the entire year. We started out with $400. We made $155. We spent $108.50. That was all membership, and ended the year with $467.50. There was no outstanding checks because there were only the two. And those two were the two to membership for the 29 members for the year. So our income wasn't 155, it really was only 4650 because the 108.50 that we paid to Florida PTA doesn't really count as our income. So I think we were under 50,000, don't you? And here we have, they found them and there were no recommendations, so they just signed off on everything. Now, here we're coming upon this year. So one of the first things I'm going to do, and I will share this file with everyone, is what we call an annual review. Every month, I fill in the beginning balance, how much has been deposited that month, how much has been withdrawn that month, if there were any service charges. I might even have a column for interest if there was any interest being accrued. And then if you have a credit union account, you might also have a balance in a savings. So you need to remember to add that in every month. So we tend to get most of our memberships throughout the summer months because we are a statewide PTA and we see everybody at convention. So we got most of our memberships at the beginning of the year, and then we had a workshop and that got us some more memberships towards the middle of the year. I paid one membership in March, and then I have a check on the way to Florida right now for our ending balance this month. And then I do actually have something that we purchased this month. But I did notice we are starting to be charged by our bank. So my job tomorrow is to go to the bank and see if I can get them to stop charging us. My guess is this balance is too low and that they want a minimum balance of a higher amount. They've probably changed their banking. But as far as adding things up, this is everything that was deposited. That would be my income for the year. This is everything that has been withdrawn for checks that I've written. But I also have to remember that the other withdrawal are going to be these service charges. And if I had interest charges, that would be other income. So when it comes to total expenses, I have to add these two together, which is 160.77. But I will share with you this Excel sheet blanked so that you can fill in your information and create this summary for your auditors. Any questions about this Excel sheet? Okay, I don't see any. All right, so what am I going to do with that information? I go back to a blank audit form. And I would fill it in. So we started out at check number 203. I've written all of 2 checks again this year. So we're ending at check number 205. Our starting balance is where we ended last year. And yes, it's such a small PTA. I have these numbers memorized. Isn't that sad? 467.50. We brought in $155, giving us a total of, oh, that I forgot to add up in my head. 620 to
And
50.
you have some questions in the chat too.
Oh, what's the question?
TD Bank charges for a paper statement. Are they still required to have a hard copy of mail to us? I don't think there's a requirement to have a hard copy mailed to you, but there is a requirement that you need a copy. So if you can print them, that's what most of us are doing, is printing.
Well, Maria, the problem I have is that the reason we say have a hard copy coming to the school is when officers completely leave. It may be the only record we have of what bank they're with, is if the bank account is still being sent to the school. But
Not
yeah,
anymore.
$3
now we
is
have,
hard.
I was gonna say, so now we have it that the last bank statement's attached to the audit,
Yeah, but that's just started this last 2 years.
right? So from now on, you have that backup.
Your point is taken. File your last bank statement with your audit this year, and then you can turn your paper statements off if that $3 a month is going to be a burden.
And there's another
Obviously-
one.
Yeah, obviously on this small of a PTA, $3 a month, $5 a month is a burden.
Yeah.
Because we're not making that much money. But if this were a $150,000 PTA, $3 a month is not a burden.
The other question is this PTA's bank is charging them a fee for depositing cash at a teller. I think you have to revisit your bank.
Yeah, you need to revisit whether or not you're banking at the right institution. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to filling out my audit form for this particular PTA. Can you see the audit form?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I've lost track of what I'm on. Okay, yes. So then my expenses, my disbursements, was 160.77. Uh-oh, I've lost my form. Do you guys still see the form?
The audit form, yes.
Yeah, okay. 160.77. And then the book balance on hand is the difference between that. Somebody have a calculator handy? This is where I'd go back to my Excel sheet. Take a look.
I'll let you go.
And book balance on hand is 431.73. $431.73. Okay. So the total account statement balance, because I have nothing outstanding, everything is going to be the same. 431.73. Oh, outstanding checks, I made a mistake. That's 0. And 431.73. This is why you kind of want to run through the numbers in advance of your audit committee and make sure that everything makes sense, that you can make the numbers match, so that we know that they can make it match. But then as far as everything else is concerned, you don't need to fill it out. That is for the audit committee to fill out. Okay. We have one new message in the chat. Oh, yep, got it. So
Another
you've got
question.
your annual summary, you've got your audit form. What do you need to have in your records for your treasury? Well, one of the most important things you need to have is your documentation. So we talked, Erica mentioned that she had one where a check had been written, there was no documentation. Big red flag. Well, there's some documentation that you need to know where to find it, and that is givebacks. So you log into givebacks with your login. Everybody should have an individual login to givebacks. That you don't share with anyone. This is you. So when I log in, this is me. And I'm logged into my SEPTA of Florida account, the PTA you just saw me do the audit for. And I'm going to go to the dashboard. And as of this morning, Maria and Erica, Givebacks has changed their dashboard.
Yeah,
So go check it out.
I saw that.
Literally today is the first day.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I saw
here
that.
is the member count. It's telling me that we did 17% less than last year. So it's giving me my own goals here. I can go back and look at prior years, or I can, if I don't want to see this, I can take it off of my desktop. They've got quick links to all this good stuff, and you can edit that. If you never go to certain things, then you can take those off of your links. So your desktop now is, your dashboard is completely editable for what you need to do. And making sure that you've got everything set up. I've got all my little green checks. So I'm good to go on setup. And if I need any help, there's all these wonderful tour guides over here on how to do anything that you need to do on givebacks. What do you need to do as a treasurer? You need to go to financial management. So this is its own little tab over here on the side. Under financial management, we have orders, payouts. You want to go to your orders. You will see everything that was bought out of your store for every year that's gone by. So if you have a very active store, this is going to be a very, very, very long list. If you don't have an active store like this particular PTA, then it's not going to be so active. You can filter your view. You can look by order ID, customer email, customer name, purchase date, payment method, whether it's cash or credit card, whether it's been fulfilled or not fulfilled, products. If you wanted to make individual lists of the products that were ordered, you can do that here. And then something new that I haven't explored too much is account code. So if you wanted to have spiritware as an account code, and you wanted to have membership as an account code, and you wanted to have donations as an account code, you could separate your orders by those as well. Not only by product, but by account code. So I can download the entire list here, export it to CSV, and it's going to create a file in my download. Notice that this popped up, my downloads. It is going to be generically titled export. And you can see I have several right now. I've exported this a few times. You open up the latest one. Share that. Oops, I've lost my Zoom. My apologies for the little bit of a downtime here. I've lost my edge of my Zoom, so I can't navigate.
Mm-mm. There's a new message in the chat.
What does it say, Maria? Well, I'm trying to find my toolbox.
Okay. Are we allowed to share the workload or split treasurer duties with other members while staying compliant? I noticed the rule can be allowed for one person.
There's no reason why you can't have an assistant or a vice treasurer, but you can't have co-treasurers. There needs to be one person in charge who's the treasurer. But as far as the workload is concerned, yeah, there's no reason why you can't split the workload. I will tell you that I could not be there for as much fundraising as my elementary school wanted to do. And so I had to have a deposit chair. I had to have somebody who would take the money to the bank for me every day, because I didn't get back from work until after the bank was already closed for the day. So we made an agreement. We found a volunteer who was willing to do it. I kept track of everything. I was the treasurer. I knew what was going on with all the money, but I never physically carried the money from the fundraising people to the bank. That was my deposit chair's job. She would then staple the form to the deposit cash count sheets, and drop them back off at the school in the secure mailbox, and I would pick them up the next morning when I would drop my child off for before care 2 hours before the bank even opened. So yes, sharing workload is absolutely, especially if you're a big PTA. That's a good way to do it. So here, let me share with you the Excel sheet that Givebacks downloaded. Now, these Excel sheets from Givebacks can be rather complicated. They come in as a CSV, and it wants to convert. I know what happened? It says this. You're not seeing anything, are you?
No,
Okay.
Mm.
You see it now?
not yet.
Yes.
Okay. This is the raw file from the download. Now I just downloaded every order ever. So obviously I've got things prior to this year on here. I can just go down to those that would start July and delete the 4 previous years from my file. And this is all I need to have for my records. Now, obviously this is a little hard to print because it's got so many columns. But you need to consider printing it on 11 by 14 legal size paper, or you can reduce the size if your auditors don't complain too much. These are the orders. So this doesn't help you with reconciling against your bank statements. This is everything that was ordered for the year in your thing. Okay, and then the other one that you need to download is, let me share my screen, is when you go back to Givebacks, is your payouts. Now this is the one that your auditors will need to see. Givebacks pays out only once a week, and it pays out everything that came in as one single payment. It doesn't break it down by category. For you to know what was in that payout, you have to go to this payout thing. See these 3 tabs off to the side? Now you can download or view your payout detail. If I view the payout detail, I can see that in the month of April, I received 4 payments of $5 for community membership. Each one has its individual order URL, and I can see the breakout way over under category. I can download that file, and again, it's going to be just a generic export. I'm going to want to rename those payouts. I probably want to use the payout date somewhere in the name. So this was the April 9th, 2025 payout, because that's what's going to show on my bank statement. That on April 9th or maybe April 10th, $20 came from Givebacks. And now when I look at the file, see if it'll open here for me. Here are those 4 memberships for $5 each, totaling $20. Again, these are very long files. If you can only print landscape in a regular file, then you can get rid, or hide, I should say, not get rid of, hide some of these columns that have duplicate information. That would now fit on a landscape print on regular paper, so that we can verify the $20 deposit in my account on April 9th. Okay. So am I talking a whole lot of printing? Yeah, I am. If your audit committee is comfortable with electronic files, then yeah, you won't have to print them. But if they are not, if they want paper, I hate to say it, but Treasury, the first thing I usually hear when I go to Florida PTA is, I'm so sorry, but we are going to kill a few trees. So the reality is you got to have the records, because the IRS is not going to accept the electronic files, guys. If you were to ever get audited, you were going to have to print it anyway. Audited by the IRS anyway. All right, I will now entertain any questions. Oh, we got a new message. Oh, no, they're just okays, smileys, yay. Have I answered everyone's questions, or have I overwhelmed you? Erica, did I cover it?
You sure did. You sure
I have-
did.
I
I
have
think
one
the only
question.
thing I would have said different is I just don't do the give backs, only because nobody can change the data in there. Nobody. So that's just my thing. Like, I bring a laptop and I say, here you go, I logged in for you.
Gotcha. So you provide
print.
your accountants, your auditors an electronic copy, essentially.
I do. Yeah, I make sure I'm logged in. I also don't print the minutes. Now this is a personal preference, because we have a lot of meetings and my binder gets very, very large, because we are a very active this is local unit people, not state. And so I show up with a laptop that is the property of the PTAs. And then I log in and I say, here you go. And then they can check everything, because our bank statements are no longer physical. They're digital, which I printed and people signed, but I do want them. I log into the bank account. Please look at it. I make sure like everything is ready to go, and then I step away.
Oh, that's a good point. A treasurer should not be leaving the auditors and going away cold. I mean, I used to give old fashioned here. I'd give them all the paperwork and I'd ask them, I said, do you want me to stay? Do you want me to go to another room, read a book, watch some movies, whatever? Or do you want me to leave and just leave you my phone number and you'll give me a call? Just make yourself available if they have questions, because it can solve a whole lot of problems if they can just say, hey, we just came across a $4,000 check without documentation, and you go, oh, I forgot to print that, or oh, I saved that in a subfolder and it's not in the main folder where it should be.
Or it could be in the month that you wrote it, but it didn't clear for 2 months later and you forgot to move it to that month. So that happens
Erica,
very often. That happens very often. You put
It
it in
drives me nuts.
and then you
You're
forgot
ruining
to,
my filing system.
yeah, then you
Yeah,
forgot to move it.
there's a lot of different ways to keep your books. You can keep your books in temporal order. In other words, as you write the check, and that's what Maria's actually complaining about and Erica's complaining about. Mine are everything in that month on that bank statement is going to be in that month's section. And
keep
if
it-
I wrote a check that didn't clear for a little while, and you know who you are, PTAs that are still holding those checks, then I'm going to move that check request forward until it finally does clear, or it stays in the back of the binder as an uncleared check.
Question, what do they need to look at every single transaction on the bank statement, every single transaction of the receipt?
Okay.
Or can they pick and choose? And then unless they kind of something gives them a red flag, then go through it. Because if you have a PTA that like SEPTA, you can do that one in
You can
30
look at
minutes.
every single one because there's two.
But you have one that, it's a over $50,000. If you're gonna look at every single transaction, every deposit, it could take you days. So what do
The
you
audit
recommend?
committee should make that decision.
Right, but can you give them like,
So at the very
ideas?
beginning of the audit committee should say, are we gonna look at every single one? Or are we gonna look at every one over a certain amount? Are we gonna look at every 10th transaction, every 5th transaction? The audit committee decides on how deep of a dive they take into
He's
their
right.
auditing. And honestly, it can be like, okay, I'm a teacher. When I do weekly vocabulary cards and they hand me 36 vocabulary cards, you think I'm looking at every single vocabulary card for every single one of my 120 students? No, I ain't got that kind of time. What I do is I say, okay, I'm going to pick 3 random ones in each section. And if they're all right, then you get an A. If I find a mistake, now I'm going to take a deeper dive. I'm going to look at half of your cards. And if I'm still finding mistakes, then I may look at every single one. How deep of a dive I took depended on, that initial check. And yes, I have had a situation where I gave one child an A and then the next one I gave a C, and they came back to me and said, but ma'am, our cards were identical. We worked on it together. And I said, well, the first one got lucky in that I did not grab one of the ones that was wrong. And the second one didn't. I happened to pull one of the cards that you had wrong in my initial 3, and they understood that that was unfortunately a chance occurrence. And then I looked at them and I said, so should I give you both C's or should I give you both A's? You tell me. But they were both very good students anyway, so. But yeah, that's the way it goes. You may miss something if you're doing a surveying, but more than likely, if you're surveying well enough, if there is a problem, you will start to catch it. So I wouldn't do less than every 10. I will tell you, I mean, less than 10. I would do at least every 10th transaction. If it's the kind of PTA that does a lot of transactions every month. And I will tell you that the auditors of the county council are going to get 3 3-inch binders. That's 9 inches worth of paper from me. And that's just the way it's going to be. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for coming this evening. I like to keep my topics on one item. So like I said, the next one will probably be budgeting and starting your year. So we hope to see you again. We've got a couple of conventions coming up. National Convention is still open for registration next week. $75. It's all online. No travel required. You can do it in your PJs. So we hope to see you there. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
Sandra. It was so nice to see